She was so lost in his handsome face that she could not notice how Brian's eyes shifted from her eyes to her body. His eyes slowly caressed every part of her body. As soon as the driver started the car, Sophia became aware of Brian's gaze and immediately averted her gaze away from him. She was blushing hard under his predatory gaze. She wanted to run away and hide herself somewhere. She cleared her throat to break the silence and spoke out, "Hello, Alpha. Hello." When he spoke, his voice was raspy, and it caused her to turn around and face him. At that moment, he was no longer looking at her. Her gaze moved from his side profile to his perfectly fitted suit. She could not be more stunned by his charms than this. His suit clung to his well-built body. Even while he was sitting in the car, he appeared to be quite tall. Taking a quick look at his torso, she recalled the sexy abs he had. The moment she attempted to return her gaze to his face, her eyes widened in surprise. He caught her scanning his body. "Done staring at me?" She turned around and looked outside the window. "I was not staring at you." "Oh, really?" "Yeah." Though she was lying, she tried to speak confidently. She did not want to feel embarrassed. She leaned her back against the seat and closed her eyes when she felt the cold breeze touch her face. All of a sudden, she felt Brian's scent coming closer to her. As she opened her eyes, she found him leaning toward her. She sat up while looking at him. "Alpha," she muttered as she glanced at the driver. He kept moving until his face got closer to hers. It made her lean her back against the car once again. Because he was so close to her face, she could not even take a deep breath without catching a whiff of his cologne. She closed her eyes and asked, "What are you doing?" "You will catch a cold, so I'm going to roll up the window." An instant after she heard him, she opened her eyes. She was an idiot. She thought he would kiss her. She glanced at his face as he turned toward her. She almost lost her breath when his nose brushed against hers. She gulped at the closeness. He then moved his hand to reach the window switch to close the window. She got goosebumps as his hand brushed her thighs while he was doing this. She eventually came to the realization that she needed to pull the dress down a little bit because it had shifted up while she was sitting in a hurry. I can do that," she mumbled. "Done," he said as he returned to his seat a moment later. Fixing her dress instantly, she closed her eyes and exhaled deeply, releasing the breath she had been holding the entire time. "This man is doing this intentionally," she thought. She did not open her eyes for a while and decided she would remain like that until she reached the club. She did not want to face him right now because she feared she might be flushing red. Brian did not speak during the whole ride. She wondered why he was so calm today. She realized that she could not ask him about his mother. Was his quiet mood related to hers? Just when she opened her eyes to ask him about his mother, the car came to a complete stop. She glanced outside the window. It was indeed the most expensive club in their pack. All the high-class people were entering the club with expensive clothing, though she found the women's clothes a little too revealing. She was relieved that she wore a knee-length dress. The driver got out of the car and opened the door for Brian. Sophia got out by herself. She looked around and felt amazed by the atmosphere outside the club. "Let's go." Brian stated that and proceeded to the entrance, where 2 guards were standing for checkups. They saw Brian and bowed to him. When they glanced at Sophia, she was about to unzip the chain of her bag to take out her company's ID card to show. However, Brian held her hand and told the 2 guards, "She is with me." They immediately nodded their heads and stepped aside to let them enter the club. Sophia looked at her hand, which Brian was holding. She bit her bottom lip to control her smile when he went inside the club with her hand in hand. Sophia looked around to see. In comparison to the club she visited the previous time, the establishment of the club was even more stunning. Brian headed to the lounging area. There, she discovered the members of the business community seated on the couches. She noticed Troy waving at her from there. She smiled at him and was about to wave him back, but realized that Brian was still holding her hand. She cleared her throat and said to him, "Alpha, leave my hand. Others will mistake us." Brian turned his head with a frown, but when he noticed her giving a smile to Troy, he let go of her hand and began to walk alone. Sophia followed him behind. She stood beside him when he took a seat on the couch. The clients, who were also alpha in rank, shook hands with him and then sat back in their seats. The meeting started after the waiter served them drinks. During the meeting, Sophia kept herself busy since she had to keep informing Brian about the project. "Sophia, you are free to take a seat here," Troy spoke out, which interrupted everyone. Brian turned his head to look at him and noticed that he was smiling toward Sophia again. Brian frowned when Sophia did not even glance at the seat beside him. Instead, after giving it some thought, she went to sit next to Troy without asking his permission. The men chuckled as one of them spoke out. "It appears that the financial department and Alpha's secretary are fairly close." Another man laughed and joined the conversation. "No, she only has a close relationship with the department head." Meanwhile, Sophia smiled at them awkwardly, as she did not know what to say. It was not a rule for a secretary. She had always seen Lily standing next to Brian during the meeting. The only reason she chose to sit was that she felt uncomfortable with other men glancing at her legs. Little did she know, someone did not like her action and was not pleased with how others were talking about her and Troy. With a calm expression and deep eyes, he fixed his gaze on them with a clenched jaw. Troy was unaware of Brian's dark gaze. Since the day in the office, Sophia cleared that she and Brian were not together. Troy thought of pursuing her. Sophia gave him a small grin, then turned her attention to the man who had started to speak. As the meeting ran for half an hour, Sophia made an effort to focus on her work only. She glanced at Brian once, and he did not look in a good mood at all. When the meeting was over, everyone got to their feet to leave. Sophia also stood up and thought about when the next meeting would be and where she would fix it. As everyone was ready to leave, Troy said to her, "Sophia, let's go with me. I'll drop you home." She was about to say okay because Troy had asked her to accompany him to the club today, but she had to decline his invitation. With that in mind, she pondered, why not go with him? He was her good friend, and she could not just refuse him every time. However, before she could say yes, Brian's deep voice reached her ears. "You don't need to. She came here with me, so she is going to leave with me as well." A nervous smile appeared on Troy's face as he turned his head to Brian. "Alpha, her house is on my way, so you don't need to worry." "Do you want me to repeat my words?" Brian asked Troy while lifting a brow. The other men appeared to be nervous when they saw Brian looking mad. Sophia could see that the situation was getting out of her hands, so she quickly walked to Brian and said to Troy, "It's okay, Troy. I will go with Alpha. He may have some unfinished work for me." Troy felt a fear inside himself as he looked into Brian's eyes. His penetrating gaze was fixed on him. Why did he look furious? Brian looked at others' frightening expressions. He chuckled and turned his head towards Sophia, who was now standing next to him. He wrapped his hand around her waist and pulled her closer to him. Sophia was shocked, as were the others. "In truth, I feel disoriented whenever she is not around me. After all, she is my personal secretary for a reason." The other men exchanged glances with each other and bowed their heads. "Permit us to leave." Brian gave them a nod. Troy looked at Brian's hand, which was grabbing Sophia's waist, then shifted his eyes to Brian. "Do you want to sign a permission letter from me to leave?" Brian's voice was sharp and cold, which shook Troy to the core. He immediately shook his head and bowed to him. "I apologize to you if I offended you by something, Alpha. I'm leaving." Sophia turned her head and saw Troy leaving the club with those men. She then turned her head toward Brian. She pushed his hand away from her waist and asked, "Why did you do that?" A frown formed between his brows. "What did I do?" "Why did you insult Troy in front of others?" Brian glared at her, indicating that he did not like her question. "I could accompany him. The meeting is over anyway. You talked to him like that, which made him feel humiliated." "Why do you care for him?" "I care because he is my friend." He scoffed at her. "Yeah, I know what type of friend he is." Sophia felt that he was too rude. He could have denied Troy politely. She had already told Troy that she would go with him. Then why did he get mad suddenly? Sophia walked away from him, then sat down on one of the couches. "I will go by myself," she muttered, folding her arms. Brian stared at her for a few seconds. She glanced at him and then turned to the other side, where he could not see her face. "If that's what you want, then fine," he said, walking in the other direction. Sophia's jaw dropped at his action. Other men were looking at her from different directions, and she could see them. Such an arrogant person. He did not even admit that he did it wrong. Now, what will Troy think about us? He will think I lied that day, and the rumors are true. I only made one friend in my office. But this man, he snatched that friend away from me. 10 minutes had passed since Sophia had sat on the couch in silence. A few men approached her, but she ignored them and fixed her eyes on Brian. He was drinking while sitting in the bar. The moment she caught sight of a young woman getting closer to him, she clenched her fists. She could not help but feel envious of the woman's hot body. Upon seeing Brian smirk at the woman, her eyes widened in surprise. She immediately got to her feet in rage. What was going on in his mind? Would he go with that woman to sleep while leaving her there all alone with other men? She could not stop herself and began to walk in Brian's direction when she noticed that the woman had placed her hand on his thigh. As she got closer to them, she overheard that woman. "Every woman in the club is dying to approach you. But only I dare to come toward you. Won't you reward me for my bravery?" Brian sipped his drink while looking at the woman. Sophia's blood began to boil when he did not push the woman away from him, so she decided to do it herself. She grabbed the woman's hand and turned her around to face her. "Excuse me," the woman said to her. "What are you doing?" Sophia asked the woman. The woman looked confused. "I should ask you the question. What are you doing? Why are you disturbing us?" "Us? The man behind you can ruin your life." "I don't care. For now, I want him to ruin me in his bed," the woman said while turning her head at Brian. Sophia glared at the woman. "How brazen you are. Go away from here." The woman yanked her hand from Sophia's grip and asked, "Girl, who the hell are you?" Sophia gritted her teeth and replied, "The man you are trying to seduce is mine." The woman appeared stunned upon hearing her. The realization hit Sophia that she had just claimed him as hers in front of him. She slowly turned her attention to Brian, who was staring at her. She swallowed her breath and averted her gaze immediately while swearing inside her head. "Shit!" The young woman could not help but laugh at Sophia. She thought Sophia was a random girl who was trying to seduce Brian as well. So she looked at her from head to toe and said, "Listen, little girl, go and find a big boy for you." She pointed her hand at Brian and muttered, "He is a man. He doesn't need a teenage girl like you, but a woman who can flame his desire." Sophia was caught off guard. What did she mean by saying he needed a woman? Just because she was young did not mean she did not know anything. It was just that she was not a sultry woman like this woman. "Just leave," she uttered while glaring at her. The woman rolled her eyes at her, but she froze when Brian spoke out with a chilly voice. "Leave." The woman lifted a brow and smirked at Sophia. "See? He wants a woman. He wants me." Sophia looked at Brian with disbelief. How could he choose this woman over her? Did he want to humiliate her again? "Fine, I'm leaving," she said, and she was about to turn around to leave. But a hand wrapped around her wrist. She turned to look and was stunned when Brian pulled her toward him. The young woman was shocked when she saw that. Brian turned to the woman and said, "Didn't you hear what she said? Leave." But Brian shut her mouth by giving her a glare. She felt terrified and left the bar. Meanwhile, Sophia was staring at Brian. When he turned his head to look at her, Sophia realized they were very close to each other. Her breasts were almost touching his jaw because he was still sitting on the stool. She chewed her lips and moved away from him. She tried to divert her mind. However, the woman was glaring at her from a distance, which infuriated her. She looked at Brian and asked, "You wanted to go with that woman, didn't you?" He looked amazed. "When did I say that?" "If that's not the case, then why were you so silent when she was insulting me? You know what? Go with her." He was stunned by her statements. "How can I go with her? Didn't you just scare her away from me?" "Excuse me? Did I scare her away from you?" She shook her head while grabbing her forehead in disbelief. "I can't believe this. I think she is right. You need a woman. I am just a teenage girl who needs a big boy but not an old man." As soon as he heard that, his eyes turned dark. "Did you just dare to call me old?" She smiled at him sarcastically while looking at his angry face. "Of course I did. Why are you reacting like this, Alpha? You didn't react the same way when she called me young. She was There is no need for any justification. I got it. You should find a perfect woman for you, and I will do whatever I want now. He frowned at her. What do you mean you will do whatever you want? She patted his shoulder, causing him to turn his head and glance at her hand. Enjoy your club time, Alpha Brian. I am leaving you alone. After saying so, Sophia headed to the dance floor. While making her way there, she untied her hair and wore the black hairband on her wrist like a wristband. Her dress was decent until she pulled her sleeves down, turning the dress off-shoulder and revealing a little bit of her cleavage. She looked around when she reached the dance floor. She ran her fingers through her hair to give it a blow. She grinned as she spotted a boy her age. Got it. She walked to the boy and smiled at him. The boy was stunned by her sudden appearance, but when he looked at her attractive body, he smirked at her. Hey, hottie! On the other hand, Brian was watching her from afar. When she untied her hair, he felt his sleeping beast awakening. When he first laid eyes on her while they were in the car, he was immediately captivated by the sight of her beauty. He was at a loss to comprehend how someone could appear to be so innocent while wearing a hot dress. He wanted to ruin his innocence. The sight of her approaching a boy caused Brian's eyes to turn almost red. He grabbed the glass tightly when he saw her putting her hands on the boy's shoulders. That boy took the chance and wrapped his hands around her waist. Brian finally reached the point where he could no longer take it. After loudly placing his glass on the counter, he snarled inside and then pulled himself to his feet. Without taking his eyes off Sophia, he made his way to the dance floor. His eyes fell on her bare shoulder, which was hidden under her dress a while ago. He became enraged when he realized that she pulled her sleeves down to show other men. He reached out his hand and grabbed her wrist tightly, then pulled her closer to him. Sophia looked at him with shocked eyes, but then she began to push on his chest as her body pressed against his. Let me go. Bro, she doesn't want to dance with you. The boy tried to speak to Brian with anger, but when Brian turned to him with glowing red eyes, the boy took a few steps back in fear. Since it was a dance floor and the DJ lights were flickering, others could not see what was happening around them. They were busy with themselves. Sophia tried to break herself free, but Brian drew her once again. We are leaving right now, Brian said with a cold tone. Like a stubborn girl, she shook her head. No, I won't go with you. Brian stared at her, and then his eyes shifted to her chest. She gulped and looked away from him while struggling under his grip. She was mad at him. The last few days, he had been constantly hurting her. After taking a few deep breaths, she turned her gaze to him. Alpha, I want to stay here for a while. You can leave alone. Just as she was about to finish, he suddenly grabbed the back of her neck and pressed his lips against hers. It came as a complete surprise to Sophia when Brian began to kiss her. Her anger was alleviated by the touch of his lips, but she did not want to give in to her feelings. She tried to push on his chest. However, he grabbed her hands and locked them behind her back. He broke the kiss for a second. She could see his alluring face under the flickering silver lights. He gazed directly into her eyes. Her eyes could see something enigmatic in his eyes. His gaze slowly moved to her lips, and he leaned over them again. She shut her eyes as his lips began to move against hers. No matter how much she tried to make up her mind, his one touch had the ability to melt her entirely. It was a rough kiss. He was expressing all of his anger toward her in that kiss. The harsh strokes of his lips over her tender ones caused her to moan in the kiss. She felt drunk without even consuming alcohol. She could taste alcohol in his mouth when his tongue touched hers. As if he understood that she had given in to him, he slowly let go of her hands and wrapped his hands around her waist. Almost as if he wanted to eliminate any distance between them, he pulled her closer to him. She started to feel breathless and placed her hands lightly on his shoulder. He broke the kiss and looked at her. His predatory eyes were scrutinizing her delicate face. She kept her eyes half closed and parted her lips to catch her breath. When she took a few deep breaths to calm herself, she tried to look at him clearly. However, as soon as she looked at him, He removed his hand from her waist and began to pull her in the opposite direction by grabbing her wrist. While passing the crowd, Sophia noticed there were couples making out on the dance floor. She cast a glance outside the dance floor and spotted that some of the couples were almost having sex by the way they were straddling each other. She immediately looked away from them and lowered her head while walking behind Brian. Here, nobody gave a damn about anybody. Everyone was engrossed in their own worlds, relishing the night with their partners. Sophia thought they were leaving, but to her surprise, Brian brought her to another side, where the sounds of music faded as they continued to walk ahead. The lights were dim, and she was unable to make out anyone there. Before she could ask where they were heading, he stopped and turned to her. "Where are we go?" He pushed her against a wall and caged her between his arms. The sudden closeness made her gasp. "We are close to the back door of the club." "Back door?" she asked, blinking her eyes while looking at him. When she saw how deeply he was looking at her, she lowered her head, avoiding his gaze. He lifted her chin and made her look at him. She let out a shaky breath when she met his eyes again. "I was calm, wasn't I? Why did you provoke me when you asked for time for me to prepare yourself? Why did you awaken my beast, which now seeks to hover over you?" His husky voice and his intimate words twisted her stomach inside. Her lips parted to say something, but she lost her voice. She bit her bottom lip when he leaned down to come close to her face. She moved back slightly and ended up pressing her head against the wall, just like her back. "Now you have to take the responsibility," Brian whispered, leaning into her ear. She wanted to ask what he was saying. However, she moaned when he sucked her earlobe. She reached up and grabbed his hands right away, but he grabbed them and pinned them over her head, despite the fact that she was not resisting him. She was taking deep breaths with her mouth open when he continually kissed and licked her earlobe. He moved from her ear and kissed her cheek. She was surprised when his thumbs began to circle around her palms, giving her different pleasures. "Alpha. He hummed when his nose kept brushing her cheek. It seemed as though he desired to kiss not only her lips, but also her entire face. He wanted to express his desire for her with these small things. He kissed her eyelids, which caused her to close her eyes. "Why can't you be obedient, huh? You know I don't like to get mad at you." She froze at his words. He did not like to get mad at her. "Why?" she asked with a desperate tone. He stopped kissing her face to look at her when she opened her eyes. She gazed into his mysterious eyes to understand him. He smirked and leaned on her lips. "You know the answer." Saying that, he crashed his lips on hers. The kiss was so passionate that she could not stop herself from kissing him back. She struggled to free her hands from his grips so that she could touch him, wrap her hands around his neck, and caress his soft locks. But as if he were punishing her, he did not let go of her hands. In fact, he released her lips and looked at her. She gulped the way he was looking at her breasts. Though she was wearing a dress, she felt she was naked in front of him. "How dare you try to grab another man's attention?" he asked her. I was just... Ah! He attacked her neck and began to kiss her there. His mouth moved down until he reached her collarbone. He lightly bit there, which caused her to hiss. How much he wanted to touch him right now. It felt like a torment to not be able to hold him in her arms when he was doing so much to her. Her eyes were closed tightly as she was taking in all the pleasure he was giving her. But her eyes flung open in surprise when he pressed his body against hers. At that time, he released her hands and wrapped his hands around her body. He leaned over her breasts and uttered, "I want you to keep looking into my eyes, baby girl." Slowly, Sophia looked into his eyes. The sight of his face close to her breasts caused her to gasp. While he was looking into her eyes, he pulled her sleeves down a little bit, which revealed the upper side of her breasts. She was taken aback by the fact that if he had pulled harshly, her breasts would have been completely exposed to him. But to her surprise, he was not that insensible to strip her in a hallway. As he kissed her upper breasts, he eventually let go of her sleeves. She moaned while looking at him. His grip tightened as her soft moans only made him harder. While he was fixated on her, he noticed that she was trying to avoid making eye contact with him. It was then that he released his grip on her body and pressed his body against hers once more. She leaned her head against his shoulder, as everything was too much pleasure for her. He bit the tip of her earlobe gently and whispered, "I am not done yet." She moaned and moved her head away from his shoulder. She looked at him with an innocent face. His face remained calm, as if he were not feeling upside down inside. He lifted his hand while caressing the side of her body. His hand came to a stop on her face. He rubbed her lips with his thumb. She did not know what the consequences of loving this man would be, but she decided that she would continue loving him. He tilted her head as his hand reached the back of her neck. He gave her a passionate kiss as if there were no tomorrow. As soon as his lips made contact with the tender spot where mates were supposed to mark, she could not help but call him mate. Just as he heard her, he came to a halt. When he looked at her, he noticed that her eyes were filled with tears. It dawned on him that he had come dangerously close to losing control. Did he make her feel uncomfortable? He immediately tried to move back with a frowning face. On the other hand, she did not remove her hands from his neck, which prevented him from moving. "See, can I call you mate?" she asked as she realized she could not live without this man. He was her mate, and all she wanted in her life now was to stay close to him. The way he made her feel was something she could never imagine. She had never gotten so close with anyone before like that, not even with Bruce. The only thing they had done together in that relationship was kiss, and she had always prevented Bruce from touching her body whenever he tried to do so. She was afraid that he would lose control and they would end up having sex. Though she wanted to give her all to Bruce at that time, there was always something stopping her inside. Now she realized what used to stop her. It was her wolf. Her wolf might have felt that Bruce was not her mate. That was the reason why her wolf prevented her from going any further. Brian stared at her without replying. She thought he did not like what she asked him. She was afraid that, because of it, the softness in his eyes for her would disappear. She did not want him to become cold toward her once again. She released his neck. He stood straight. She looked at his tall figure, which was hovering over her a while ago. Never in her life had she been this close to another man. She only gave him the right to do anything to her. She would agree to be in a relationship with him that was not committed if that was what he desired. After taking a deep breath, she tiptoed and hugged his neck. Brian was taken aback by her sudden action. She closed her eyes and mumbled to him, "I am ready to do anything you want, but be completely mine and never hurt me, mate." He stared at the blank wall without letting out anything or hugging her in return. She felt his distant mood and broke the hug. She was frightened by his silence. She almost cried when she thought he did not care about her words. She lowered her head and wiped the corners of her eyes. After a while, she saw him moving. She raised her head and saw that he was taking off his suit jacket. He wrapped the jacket around her without making any eye contact, even though she was eager to meet his eyes. He turned around and started walking in the direction of the back door. "Let's go. It's getting late." Sophia fixed her gaze on the back of the man. The width of his shoulders was highlighted by the white shirt he was wearing. With the power he was holding and the way he walked forward like a king, she realized that she was nothing in comparison to him. To him, her wishes held no weight. He was the head alpha of the largest pack. She did not even know how many packs he had won in the last few years. A powerful man like him would never like a girl like her. She was not from a high-class family. She did not come from a wealthy family that would have allowed her to be by his side. There was only one reputation that could at least give her respect, which was that she was the sister of the Gamma of this pack. Otherwise, a mere Omega like her was not close to him. She was chosen for him by fate. She was not his choice. A tear escaped from her eyes. She lowered her head once again to wipe her tears and trailed along at a slow pace behind him. While she was walking behind him, she cast a glance in his direction. As he was using his phone to make a phone call to someone, he put one hand in his pocket. Sophia assumed that he was calling his driver. As she continued to look at him, the intimate things that he had been doing to her a short while ago kept playing over and over in her head. She raised her hand and held the coat tightly to her chest. The feeling of the touches of his lips still lingered on her body. She stopped when she saw Brian reach the door. She wondered how he knew that there was a back door. How many times had he come to this place? Why did he come here before? Just thinking about him doing those things that he was doing to her with some other woman, her heart clenched inside. She sighed and shook her head. That was his past. I also had a past with his brother, but he never brings those matters up, so I should not think about his past too. As Brian walked out of the club, Sophia also did the same. The moment she came outside, the cold wind touched her face and legs. She felt shivers in her body. She glanced at Brian's coat, which was covering her upper body fully. Brian's car approached from the other side and came to a stop right next to him. His driver got out hurriedly to open the back door for him. Brian did not get inside. Instead, he turned to Sophia and asked, "What are you waiting for?" "Huh?" She came out of her thoughts and walked to the car. She got inside the car. Brian closed the door and walked to the other side. When he sat next to Sophia, the driver went back to his seat and started the car. "Alpha, where to?" the driver asked while driving the car away from the club area. "Her house," Brian replied. Sophia turned her head to look at Brian. He was silently looking outside the window. She stared at him and thought, "Why are you so hesitant to make any promises? Why can't you just open your heart for me?" A few minutes later, the car moved onto a bumpy road, which caused her to lean on him, dangerously close to falling onto his lap. He wrapped his hand around her to keep her from getting hurt by the front seats. Taking advantage of the opportunity, she rested her head against his chest. She could sense that her action had frozen him. However, she did not care what he would do or think. She had the courage to lean on him, and she had done it. She closed her eyes and slowly wrapped her hands around his torso. "I will be obedient. Please don't treat me coldly," she mumbled in a low tone. But Brian heard her clearly. He moved his hand from her shoulder to her head and began to stroke her hair. When she felt his gentle caress on her hair, she could not help but smile. Her grip on him is tightening. She was over the moon. She felt a sense of relief when she realized that he was not angry with her. The last few days, she was stubborn enough to even talk to him and decided to stay away from him. But at this moment, everything seemed to be under a spell, as if he were a magician and did some magic on her, or he was a wizard who used a spell to bind her. Her wolf was overjoyed to get close to her mate. Sophia blushed when she felt him pulling her closer to him. In just one night, they had become so close. She had never imagined that they could be this close one day. "Sleep. When we get to your house, I will wake you up," he stated quietly. She nodded her head and did not move at all. He let her sleep on his chest, which gave her a sense of security. She felt that it was her safe place. No one in the world could harm her if he was with her. She did not realize it when she fell asleep in his arms. When she opened her eyes, she saw smoke in front of her. She was about to sit up but found her head leaning on a firm chest and an arm wrapped around her. She realized what had happened before she fell asleep. She turned her head and saw Brian smoking. He was still holding her in his arms. "Have we arrived at my house?" she asked softly. He replied, unwrapping his arm from her shoulder. She sat up and looked at him. His stillness sometimes frightened her. She could only get a few reactions from him, such as a calm look, and at his glare, smirk, or dark chuckle. One of his favorite responses was to maintain his composure. That was what Sophia thought. The fact that he continued to stare at her caused her to flush. She lowered her head and said, "Alpha, I am leaving then." He raised his hand and patted her head. "Be a good girl, and don't overthink about anything." Like an obedient girl, she replied, "Yes," but her face brightened up with happiness when she heard his next statement. "And you can call me that." She raised her head to look at him. She smiled at him and asked, "Mate?" He gave him a nod and replied, "Only when we are alone." With a bright smile on her face, Sophia nodded her head at Brian. Okay. She just cared about him, no one else. If he wanted her to address him by it only when they were alone, she was okay with it. She opened the door and got out of the car. She then lowered herself to the window and looked at him. "Good night, mate." He blew out a smoke ring after taking a puff and blinked at her. "Good night." She blushed and turned around, then headed to the door of her house. "Miss." Sophia came to a halt and spun around. It was Brian's driver. He walked over to her with a small bag. "Yes?" "Alpha told me to hand you this." Sophia gazed at the car. Brian was looking at her. "What is it?" she asked Brian. "You haven't had your dinner," Brian replied. After giving the bag a closer inspection, Sophia realized that it belonged to a fancy restaurant. She felt warmth in her heart, and he kept that in mind and picked up a parcel for her. "Thanks." Brian did not reply. She said thanks to the driver too, and proceeded to the door once again. She took out the keys from her bag and slowly opened the door, praying that her mother was asleep. She turned her head and found Brian's car still there. She thought he would leave once she entered the house. She went inside and found the light dim. She understood that her mother was sleeping. She let out a sigh of relief and closed the door. She hurried to her bedroom on tiptoes. The moment she entered her room, she closed the door and leaned her back against the door. She was happy, very happy. She could not believe how close Brian and she had come today. He even gave her permission to call him mate. Everything felt like a dream to her. She lowered her head and sniffed Brian's coat. His scent lingered on it, causing her heart to race. She walked toward the mirror and slowly took off the coat. Her lips parted in surprise when she found so many hickeys in her neck and over her breasts. She slowly touched them, then hissed. She could still feel the touch of his lips on them. She covered her face in shyness. She went to the window and looked outside. She looked down at the road outside her house. She could see Brian's car leaving. She leaned her head against the frame of the window while looking at the car. She took a deep breath and mumbled, "I really love you, mate." Sophia walked on campus with a delightful face. Sarah kept looking at her as she walked alongside her to their class. "Will you tell me what happened? You are smiling like a fool." When Sarah did not get any response, she guessed what might have happened. "Did Alpha and you, last night?" she whispered to Sophia. Sophia's face turned red as she came out of her thoughts. "I can see you blushing, honey. Oh, come on. You don't have to tell me anything in detail. Just let me know if he makes a move toward you." Sophia flushed and lowered her head. "He allowed me to call him mate when we were alone." Sarah's eyes lightened up. "Wow, that means he has accepted you as his mate in his heart." "I think so." Sophia could not say Brian had nothing in his heart for her. That man took care of her. Even though she thought she would go to bed hungry, he gave her a box of dinner. He did not leave without seeing her enter the house. If it's not love, then what is it? He is too stubborn to accept it, but I will be the woman in his heart, Sophia thought. After finishing 2 classes, it was the class where Sophia would have to attend with her group. From today on, they were going to start working on their project. As the professor said last time, Sophia went to sit with Bruce. She was calm. She did not want to argue with Bruce in any way. Right now, for her, he was only her mate's younger brother. "Bruce, will you just stop staring at me?" Sophia asked when Bruce kept looking at her in the whole class. "I can't help it." Whatever. As usual, she could not pay attention in class. When the class was over, her other 2 group members turned their heads at them since they were sitting in front of them. "Let's meet in the afternoon to start the work on this project," the girl said. Sophia was worried about it. She had to work in the office. It was impossible for her to meet them in the afternoon. "Well, as you all know, I am currently working for a company. I can't come to meet you all in the afternoon." The girl rolled her eyes as if she had no interest in Sophia's words. "What about you, Bruce? Since she won't come, how do you think I will?" Sophia gave Bruce a look, but he ignored it. The girl stood up and looked at her boyfriend. "Let's not prioritize the project since 2 of our members are not active." Bruce frowned at her and said, "Divide the work into 2 parts. Sophia will be on my team. I will work with her." "Excuse me?" Sophia said. The girl gave a nod to Bruce. "Good idea." Her boyfriend also agreed with it. Sophia got to her feet. "Oh, hello. I am also a member of this group. You all can't decide anything without me." Bruce stood up and replied, "Majority wins, baby." Sophia pushed him and got off the bench. "Do whatever you want." When she walked out of the class, Bruce followed her behind. "Sophia, don't follow me." He grabbed her hand and turned her toward him. can you please just listen to me? What? I was only saying that because I knew you could not make it on their schedule. Okay, how will I make it with your timetable then? You can. You can call me whenever you are free from work. We will work on this project at that time. Sophia was stunned. Was he telling the truth? Why would he do that? Suddenly, Bruce lowered his head and said, I had thought about it a lot. About what? She asked in confusion. He looked at her and replied, I will not bother you from now on. Sophia's brows lifted in shock. Do you really mean this? Then she smiled at him. Oh, such great news. It's a good thing. He stared at her for a while. He then extended his hand toward her and said, Let's be friends, Sophia. Maybe it can help us to remove the discomfort between us. As the days passed, Sophia's life began to change. She was no longer that tense and worried girl. She now smiled brightly, spoke sweetly, and remained cheerful. Everyone around her could see the difference. Her bubbly personality was what caught others' attention the most. Anyone could just look at her and say that she was blooming like a beautiful flower. Miss Sophia, can you please talk to Alpha about it? A young woman, an employee of the marketing department, asked her. As Sophia was making coffee for Brian, she approached her. Sophia smiled politely at her, but her lifted eyebrows could not hide the surprise in her face. Miss Livia, why do you think Alpha would listen to me? We all know Alpha listens to you. Last time, you saved Director Troy from losing his reputation after the presentation. Sophia cleared her throat and shook her head in response. It was a few days ago when Troy failed to remember to bring his pen drive, which contained all of the information from the presentations that were saved. Therefore, their PAC was unable to present any presentations during the PAC meeting, and they merely requested that the meeting be postponed until another day. Brian was so angry that he almost fired Troy. However, Sophia requested Brian be in the conference hall in front of others. She said Troy would make it up with his hard work. Brian was cold enough to shake others, and everyone thought Sophia was a fool for asking something like that from Brian. But to everyone's surprise, Brian glared at Troy and said that it was his last warning. From that day on, everyone understood the power Sophia held. She had the power to convince Alpha Brian. That was why Livia came to her and asked for a few days more to present the inspection of the consumer market. Look, Miss Livia, I am just his personal secretary. Livia held her hands and begged her. Sophia, please. My mom is sick, so I could not go to the field and give much time to the inspection. Please tell him to give me 2 more days. I promise I will present the whole sales chart and all the demands of the consumer market. I will have to work with the promotion and advertisement department too. When Sophia heard Livia say her mother was sick, her heart melted. She remembered that her mother was also sick and a heart patient. She could feel the pain and responsibility of Livia. She let out a sigh and replied, Okay, let me see what I can do for you. Livia's eyes brightened up. Thank you so much, dear. But only 2 days, okay? Sophia reminded her. Livia nodded her head in response. Yeah, only 2 days. Okay. After finishing the conversation, Sophia grabbed Brian's coffee mug and headed to his office. While passing other employees, she had to bear their gazes on her. All she could do was ignore them properly. She stood in front of the CEO's office door and knocked on it. Come in. As soon as she heard his voice, she opened the door and entered the cabin with a smile on her face. She closed the door behind her, and then her eyes immediately fell on the man sitting behind the desk. He was holding a phone close to his ear while talking with the person at the end of the line. There was a frown on his face, indicating that he was not satisfied with talking or hearing something. Sophia walked to the desk as Brian had not glanced at her yet. She stood close to the desk while holding the mug. She was trying to hear his conversation, which gave him this bad mood. I will attend the PAC party next week, Brian said and hung up the call. He threw the phone on the desk, which flinched Sophia, but she tried her best to stay calm. Seeing him in a state of anger was almost like a habit for her. He was an aggressive person. When Brian raised his eyes, he focused his attention on her. She took a deep breath and then proceeded to head over to his chair after walking around the desk. She put the coffee mug on the desk, then turned her head to look at him. The pair of black eyes never left her face from the moment they landed on her. Your coffee, she said as she tried to think of how she could ease his anger. He gripped the handle of the mug and looked away from Sophia. He sipped on the coffee and closed his eyes while leaning his back against his chair. Sophia smiled at him because she understood that he liked her coffee. When he opened his eyes, they were calm. My coffee makes him calm, she thought in her mind. Is everything okay? She asked him. Her voice was low and soothing. Her tone was filled with nothing but obedience. Brian put the coffee mug on the desk and glanced at her. He reached out to touch her hand as she was standing next to him. Come here. She held his hand and sat on his lap obediently. She rested her head on his chest and asked, What happened, mate? Why are you so angry? He put his hand on her head and ran his fingers through her hair. His action moved her, and she closed her eyes. The pack party I wanted to have in this pack will be held in another pack. She raised her head to look at him, but her nose brushed against his when she turned her head. She leaned back a few inches to speak with him. So what will we do now? She asked while looking into his mysterious eyes, which never failed to captivate her. We will have to go there to attend the meeting next week. We? She almost moved from his lap after hearing it, but his hands tightened around her waist to stop her from moving. She looked at him with a shocked expression. We? Did you mean that I would also need to go there? Every expression she made was captured by his gaze. He could see how nervous she was. Yes, you are going with me to another pack next week. Sophia could not believe it. How would she get out of the pack? Her mother would never permit her to do it. In fact, she had never gone out of this pack in her whole life. I can't, she replied to him. There was a slight movement in his calm eyes. She could see it clearly. They turned a little dark and gloomy. She came to the realization that she had reacted too much, so she took a deep breath and lifted her hands to place them on his shoulders. Mate, you know my family. Mom will not give me permission. He remained silent, which sent a shiver down her spine. She hugged him as she felt frightened by his calm and dark expression. Mate, I'm sorry. His muscles loosened a little as she hugged him tightly. Don't worry about your mother. I'm taking you on a business trip, not a private vacation. She froze because of his remark, but she did not break the hug. She only hid her face in his chest. His cologne soothed her as she calmed down and smiled a little. If he managed her mother, she would have no problem with it. It would be only a 2-day event anyway. In the last few days, Brian was no longer the Brian she met for the first time. He turned soft for her. He let her touch him and hug him anytime. Just as he called her his baby girl, he looked after her. He knew what she liked and never forgot to surprise her with her favorite things. He did not put her under much pressure at work. He took her to have meals sometimes. Day by day, Sophia began to believe that he also knew he loved her. Otherwise, why hadn't he slept with her yet? Okay, she mumbled in reply. She, on the other hand, turned into the most obedient girl, just like Brian wanted her to be. She knew when his mood was off, so she chose to remain silent. She knew her closeness calmed him, so she always tried to soothe him whenever he got angry. Like the only woman in his life, he embraced her in his arms. His chin rested on the tip of her head. After a while of staying like that, she broke the hug and looked at him. She recalled what Livia said to her. She sat up straight, but when she felt her bottom move on his thigh, she blushed. She lowered her head and started fiddling with his shirt's second button. When Brian saw she was biting her lower lip, he lifted her chin to make her look at him. The touch of his fingertips gave her tickle feelings under her chin. What do you want to say? She looked at him with surprise. How do you know I want to say something? He reached out his hand to hold the coffee mug and sipped it. I know you. Go ahead. She stared at him. He knows me. Yes, he knows me really well, she said in her head. She coughed a little and held his hand, which was holding his chin a few seconds ago. Can you please give a little more time to Miss Livia for submitting her project? She became nervous when he paused while drinking the coffee. He shifted his gaze at her and raised an eyebrow. She cleared her throat a few times as if she could find her voice in front of him. Why? He asked. Mate, please. Her mother is sick. So? She was stunned by his blank expression. She played her fingers on his button again and replied, Please give her 2 more days. She has to take care of her mother too. Did she tell you all these things? She shook her head and lied to him. She could not risk Livia's job. No, I overheard others. That means she was talking about these in the office. Otherwise, how did they know? She looked at him with a shocked expression. Why was this man so clever? He knew that Livia was the one who said it, but he wanted to hear it from her mouth. She tried to think of how she would convince him. She smiled at her and said, "Please don't fire her, mate. Give her some spare time, pretty please." She gave him a puppy look and blinked her eyes quite a few times, the intention being to win his heart over. But he looked like a stone. She thought he would not agree. After a while, he put the mug on the desk and unwrapped his hands from her waist, leaving her to go. "Please?" He gave her a nod. "If you want that, then okay." A broad grin appeared on her face. "But what will I get in return?" he asked, moving his finger around the mug's rim. Sophia shook her head. This man was a business tycoon. He only believed in deals. She would have to give something in return. But she was happy that he did not refuse her request. "Thanks, mate," she said and kissed his cheek. Before he could turn his head toward her, she got up from his lap and rushed to the door with a flushed face. "I am going back to my cabin," she said hastily, before opening the door and leaving. When she came out of the cabin, she let out a deep breath that she had been holding before kissing Brian's cheek. For the first time, she took the initiative. It was because in the last few days he made her comfortable with him. She patted her cheeks while going to her cabin. Trying to control her smile, she bit her bottom lip. "You are so brave, Sophia." "Not bad." She gave her shoulder a pat and chuckled. She could only imagine Brian's frozen expression at how boldly she had just reacted. Her thoughts were interrupted when her phone rang. She grabbed her phone from the desk and looked at the caller's name. She received the call. "Bruce, will you be free around 7? I will come to pick you up." After giving it some thought, Sophia reclined in her chair and replied to Bruce, "You know Alpha doesn't leave the company before 8. As his personal secretary, how can I?" "Oh, come on, Sophia. You need to be available today. I managed the other 2 for tonight. You know how important this project is for us." Sophia played with her nails as she tapped them lightly on the desk. She struggled to come up with a way to convince Brian to let her go before 8 o'clock. A few days ago, Bruce asked her to be his friend. She agreed with him. She thought he was right about the situation. Everything would be fine if they were to become friends with one another. It would be possible for her to be with Brian, where there would be no conflict between the 2 brothers. "Okay." "What okay? Are you coming or not?" Bruce's desperate tone was audible. "Yeah, I'm coming, but don't come here to pick me up. I will come by myself. Just tell me where to come." "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I am." "All right, then come to our dormitory." "Done." Sophia hung up the phone and stared at the screen for a while. Things were going well between Bruce and her. He was no longer a source of annoyance for her. He behaved like a friend and talked nicely to her. He stayed within his limits. For Brian's sake, Sophia was even willing to forget Bruce's mistakes and make an effort to be friendly with him, despite the fact that it was difficult for her to talk to and spend time with her ex-boyfriend. One thing that always bothered her was that Brian did not know about the project that she and Bruce were working on. Bruce requested not to tell Brian about it since there was nothing between him and her. He said this had nothing to do with Brian, and he didn't want his brother to interrupt his study projects. Sophia let out a sigh before opening her computer. As soon as she started working, her thoughts kept going back to Brian. She spent the entire day at work. Whenever Brian called her in his office, she tried to ignore making eye contact with him. She was feeling too shy after kissing his cheek. Surprisingly, Brian did not tease her and focused on his work only. As time was getting closer to 7, Sophia was getting nervous. She was in Brian's office, standing next to the desk with another employee. Brian was talking with the employee. Meanwhile, she kept glancing at the clock. Brian noticed it and asked, "Miss Berge?" She jerked at his voice and turned to him. "Yes, Alpha?" She did not always call him mate. She called him that only when they were alone. But right now, there was another employee in the room with them. Looks like you are keeping track of time. Is there any plan waiting for you? Sophia let out an awkward chuckle as she was about to shake her head, but she refrained from doing so when the angry looks on the faces of her group members reflected her own thoughts. She could not make it last time. Most of the time, she spent time with Bruce in the library during her class break to work on the project. But not always. Only two of them could work. There was something called group discussion, too. She cleared her throat and said, "Alpha, I want to take a leave right now. I have a plan. It would be a great help if you could let me go 1 hour earlier today." Brian raised an eyebrow when he heard that. He motioned with his fingers for the employee to leave his cabin. After giving Sophia a quick glance, the employee bowed to Brian and then left the room. "What plan?" Brian asked her. Sophia thought of an excuse, but she realized that she did not need to lie to him. "I have group studies. I have to go to the campus right now." Brian placed the file on the desk that he was holding before and stood up from his chair. When he approached her, she felt he was like a tower. She lifted her head to look at his face. "You spend the entire day working, and then you put in a lot of effort studying. Do you want me to speak with your professor?" "No," she said immediately. Brian gave her a questioning look. Sophia bit her tongue and sighed. "Alpha, please don't talk to anyone. I can manage everything together." Brian observed her expressions for a while. Sophia gulped when she noticed how his dark eyes scrutinized her face. It was true that even if Bruce had not told her not to say anything to Brian, she would still not have said anything to him. She did not want Brian to react coldly to her just because she was with Bruce for study projects. He would not understand her friendship with her ex-boyfriend. "Alpha? Okay." Her eyes lightened up. She smiled at him. "Thank you, mate." She blushed when she saw he did not leave his gaze away from her. "I am thinking of going." This was the second time she cut him off and replied, "I can go by myself. Are you sure?" "Yeah." "Okay." He gave her a simple nod. She almost frowned when she saw there was something in his eyes. But after finishing the conversation, she did not wait for a minute in Brian's cabin and left. She did not want Brian to change his mind. When Sophia left the company and made her way to the bus stop, a man was looking down at her while smoking near the large window on the top floor of the building. His dark eyes trailed her movements until she disappeared from his sight. He moved his gaze from the street and looked at his phone as he dialed a number. When the phone connected, the man from the other end spoke out, "Alpha." Brian's eyes darkened as he said, "Follow her." When Sophia arrived on campus, she immediately called Bruce. The moment he emerged from the dormitory building, he gave her a friendly wave. She made her way over to him and asked, "I forgot to ask, who stays here?" "Jason," he replied. Oh, Jason was the other boy in their group, and her girlfriend was Tina. She was a little bold. However, they did not react badly to Bruce, as he had some reputation on their campus. "Let's go," he said, leading her upstairs. They went to the second floor. As Sophia walked past the rooms, she looked around. When she looked around, she realized that she had never been to the dormitory before. She could get a glimpse of the lifestyle of the students who stayed there. As Bruce approached a room, he knocked on the door and stood in front of it. It was Jason who opened the door. Sophia peeked inside and found Tina sitting on the bed. She was fixing her clothes as if the two were doing something before Bruce knocked on the door. Jason stepped aside and let them enter the room. Sophia glanced around the room and felt that it was a small but comfortable room for staying. She turned to Tina, who had gotten out of bed, to let Bruce sit on it. "Thank God you made it today. Otherwise, I thought we would have to start our room date," Tina said to Sophia while rolling her eyes. Sophia paid no attention to her comments and instead sat down on the edge of the bed. "Let's start, guys," Bruce said to others. When Jason got in bed, Bruce signaled for Sophia to move from where she was sitting and sit next to him. Sophia frowned, but when she saw how close Jason was sitting and how Tina was glaring at her because she wanted to sit with her boyfriend, she got up and went to sit next to Bruce. As they started to work, they became busy with the project. When Bruce showed them how much work he had done, Sophia was completely taken aback. In fact, he also did the work that Sophia took in her hand. "I must say Bruce can do anything to win his ex-girlfriend's heart," Tina remarked. Sophia gave her a calm look, but her words were sharp, which shocked Tina. Can't you just focus on your own business, Tina? Tina gave her a mocking glare. I didn't lie, though. Sophia felt that the people around them would not let others get out of their pasts. Just as Bruce made the decision to behave like a good man and make friends with her, other people began to make fun of him at that moment. They would not let him escape his past and move on with his life. I know you girls. You are pretending hard to get so that he will chase you more, Tina said to Sophia. Just shut up. I didn't come here to take your shit, Bruce almost yelled at Tina. Sophia's eyes widened when she saw Bruce yelling at Tina. Tina was almost teared up by his alpha voice. Sophia could not help but grasp Bruce's hand. Calm down. Don't yell at her. He shook his head and glared at Tina. If I see you talk to her like that ever again, then fuck the project and group studies. I will throw you out of the university. Sophia was shocked. She could see a flame of rage burning in Bruce's eyes. She was slightly startled. To her surprise, from sitting beside him while looking at his side profile and the way he was showing his anger, she could see Brian in him. Was it because both were brothers and at the same time alphas in rank? The difference was that Brian was not loud. He was a man who was very calm but aggressive at the same time. His aggression could only be seen in his dark eyes. Meanwhile, Bruce was a friendly guy, but he was loud. Unlike his older brothers, he could not keep his emotions and expressions on his face or hidden from others. I was just... Tina, let's go outside for a while. I think you need fresh air, Jason said, holding her hand and then pulling her out of the bed to leave the room for a while. He glanced at Bruce and said, Please, Bruce, don't mind my girlfriend's words. Forgive her. Bruce did not reply but only glared at Tina. Tina hid behind her boyfriend's shoulders. All of her boldness washed over her in fear. Sophia saw Jason take Tina out of the room and close the door behind them. She slowly turned her head toward Bruce. He stared at the notebooks and sheets that were scattered across the bed. You shouldn't have used your alpha voice on her, Sophia said. He rubbed his forehead and mumbled, I could not help it. She stared at him for a while. Bruce had never gotten this angry when they were in a relationship. He used to be a very composed and decent boy. When she realized her hand was still holding his hand, she tried to remove it. But he placed his palm over her hand to stop her from removing it. He turned to face her and stared at her. Sophia blinked several times when she noticed Bruce's soft gaze at her. She cleared her throat, moved his hand away from hers, and got out of bed. She reached for the notes she would need to review and stuffed them into her bag. She turned to the door and said, I'm leaving. I don't think we four can continue tonight. Plan for another day. She did not hear anything from Bruce. He remained silent. It was then that she made her way to the door, and just as she was about to open it, her waist was encircled by a pair of hands. Bruce hugged her from behind. Bruce, what are you? He interrupted her, tightening his grip around her. Sophia, friends can hug each other, can't they? Let's just stay like that for a while. In the enormous office room, Brian was sitting on his chair, typing on the laptop. It had been 2 hours since Sophia had left, but he did not leave the company and continued to work. At that moment, his phone began to ring. He glanced at the screen of his phone and saw that it was the number of the man whom he had ordered to keep an eye on Sophia. Brian received the call and put it on loudspeaker. Alpha, go ahead. Alpha, after leaving the company, she went to the Nightshade University. Brian was listening to him while tapping his fingers on the laptop. She has just come off campus, but she is not alone. She is with young Master. Brian's hands paused after hearing it. His eyes, which were dark, moved slightly. They turned gloomy until he spoke out. Follow them. Alpha, young Master is hailing a cab for her. I think she is leaving alone. The man paused as if he wanted to be sure, then said, Yes, Alpha, she is leaving alone. Then follow her until she reaches her house. Okay, Alpha. Brian did not even move to cut the call. He waited until the man hung up the phone. His fists tightened as if something were going on in his mind. If anyone were to see him, they would not be able to determine what he was thinking about. Meanwhile, Sophia leaned back against the back seat as the driver started the cab. She turned her head to the window and noticed the nightlife of the city. Her mind kept reminding her about what had happened in Jason's room. "Sophia, I'm sorry for what I did. I wish I were your mate. I would never have let you leave me, and I would have made you my wife." The word wife made Sophia feel strange at that time. She did not know why, but her heart felt a little uncomfortable. His big brother was her mate, and he had never told her to his girlfriend, so thinking about whether he would ever propose to her to his wife was very difficult. The time when Bruce hugged her, she wanted to break it, but his tight grip kept her close to him. He told her to stay quiet, just like a friend. He hugged her just like a friend. But was it just a friendly hug? She moved her eyes from the window and lowered her head. She could not forget that he was still her ex-boyfriend. She should not stay close to him. Today, she could see the remorse in Bruce's eyes. He was trying his best to become someone she would trust or accept. But she was no longer the Sophia who could return to her ex. She had a mate now, and she was in love with him. Even if that man did not want to be in a committed relationship, she was sure that he would never cheat on her. As he told her once, he was not a womanizer. She was happy with him. She would wait until the end for him to ask her to be his life partner. Sophia closed her eyes. There was a smile on her face when she recalled the moments when Brian pulled her closer to him. The way he treated her so softly, she believed he could never treat someone else like that. The next day, Sophia went to the university. She could talk to Sarah and Nolan for only a few minutes because she had no time during break hours. She had to meet Bruce for the project in the library. Bruce was quite busy the whole hour, and so was she. They only talked about the project. As Sophia decided last night, she kept her distance from him, and he also noticed it. But he did not raise the topic. When Sophia left the university, she went to the bus stop to go to the company. She boarded a bus and sat by a window. Her phone vibrated, and she unlocked her phone. She saw a message from the unknown number, which she had saved with admirer. She bit her bottom lips to control her smile and clicked to read the message. If you lie to someone to meet someone else, you should be aware that you have feelings for the second person. Sophia froze after reading it. She began to feel nervous. Did he know that she was meeting with Bruce? Why did he say that she had feelings for Bruce? Did he not know that he was the only one in her heart? When she arrived at the company, she gave others polite smiles and went to the top floor of the building. Her eyes picked up on the slightly anxious looks on the faces of other employees. She lifted her brows as she felt confused about what made their mood like that. "Excuse me," she said that and stopped a woman. "Miss Sophia, what happened to everyone?" The woman looked stunned by the question. "Don't you know? Alpha fired 2 employees today." "Why?" she asked with a shocked face. The woman leaned close to her ear and whispered, "We don't know why, but we guess his mood is kind of off today." Sophia gulped when she heard that. She turned around and headed to the coffee machine instead of going to her cabin first. She was afraid that Brian's mood was off because of her. After preparing coffee for him, she headed to his cabin. She knocked a few times on the door, but Brian did not respond. She grabbed the doorknob and opened the door. She peered inside and found Brian smoking near the window. She assumed he was having some thoughts and did not listen to her knocks, so she entered the cabin and closed the door behind her. She slowly walked to the desk. On the way, she moved to the couches and placed her bag on one of them. When she got close to Brian's empty chair, she placed the coffee mug on the desk beside it. She then glanced at Brian, her gaze focused on his back. By looking from behind, he looked like a tall and strong man in the realm of power. His black appearance radiated a dark aura around him. Sophia stood behind him and swallowed her breath. Alpha. Brian did not turn around or turn his head to glance at her. It made her feel more nervous. It was clear to her from the message that he had learned that she had gone to meet Bruce. He was angry at her. Alpha. She spoke out once again to grab his attention. While he was smoking, Brian kept his gaze fixed on the street and observed the people who were passing by from the window. The smoke rings that came out of his mouth looked like works of art. Sophia felt that she was standing in front of a painting. He looked like a stunning portrait. She gathered her courage and lifted her hand to touch him, but before her hand could reach his arm, he let out a sharp tone. "Miss Berge, have you forgotten that you are not allowed to enter your boss's cabin without his permission?" Her hand froze in the air. She looked at him with a pair of soft eyes that were reflecting so many emotions at the same time. She dropped her hand and lowered her head. "I'm sorry." Brian turned around and raised an eyebrow at her. "For what, Miss Berge?" She could not say anything. She was too afraid to look into his cold eyes. He had pampered her so much in the past few days that she could not see him looking coldly at her. She could feel his hand reaching up to her chin and lifting it so that he could get a better look at her face. Her gaze met his, and she could see his dark eyes. They moved a little when they looked into hers. She felt that he could see through her. His thumb touched her bottom lip and parted it from her upper lip. He took a puff on the cigarette while looking at her. Suddenly, he leaned down at her, which skipped her heartbeat abruptly. In a few seconds, his lips touched her, and she felt a gush of smoke rush inside her mouth. She immediately moved back and began to cough. The left corner of his mouth lifted as he said, "You should have gotten used to it by now." She bit her lower lip to stop her racing heart. She looked at him and saw that he was moving towards her. She took a few steps back until her back pressed against the edge of the desk. He stopped in front of her and observed her nervous state. "What are you afraid of? Have you done something that I don't like?" His question came out as a warning. It was an alarming tone that she ought to tell him the truth before he revealed to her that he was aware of it. She looked at him with teary eyes and said, "I'm sorry that I didn't tell you about Bruce." She could see his eyes turning dusk. There was no emotion inside them. "What about him?" he asked calmly. But his calm tone could shake anyone into fear. She took a deep breath and decided to tell him everything so that there would be no misunderstanding between them. She could not afford to see him mad at her. "I am working on a study project with Bruce. We have 2 other members in our group too. I thought you would not like it, so I didn't tell you about it. Last night, I went to meet him and the other 2 members on campus. We worked together, and then I left for home. Even today, I had to be with Bruce in the library during my break hour. It's an important project, and I did not lose marks in that subject." Sophia stared at Brian after speaking nonstop. She thought he would still remain angry at her. But she noticed a little change in his eyes. They became less cold as the darkness inside them disappeared slowly. "I'm sorry. Mate, I won't lie to you again. Don't get mad at me, okay?" Her voice was smooth like a bird singing in the morning. He did not break eye contact and stared at her. She looked away and moved to hug him. As her hands wrapped around his torso, her heartbeat immediately became calm. His warmth and his scent were soothing to her. She raised her head to look at him. "What can I do to make you accept my apology, huh?" she asked, pouting her lips like a baby. Brian took hold of her hands and removed them from his body. She was shocked that he was moving her away from him. "Mate, He could not let her speak as he leaned down and pressed his lips against hers. Her eyes widened as if she did not expect him to kiss her right now. She melted in the kiss and was about to wrap her hands around his neck. However, he grasped her hands and pinned her body down on the desk. She gasped during the kiss when she felt her back pressing against the desk. He broke the kiss and locked her hands over her head with one hand. While looking at her, he moved his other hand toward her body. His touch on her legs caused her body to move in response. Because of how she was lying on the desk, her long dress rolled up from her legs, revealing her thighs, which were wrapped around his waist. She hissed in her feelings when his hand slid to the back of her thigh. "Alf." She moaned when his hand slapped her bottom. It was a sudden pain at first, but when he caressed his palm over her skin, she felt a strange pleasure. This was all new to her. It looked like he was punishing her by making her endure the dirty pleasure. He leaned down to hover over her and looked into her eyes. Her eyes grew wide with a moan when he spanked her again. "Never try to keep anything from me again, because you can never hide yourself from me." Sophia could not even comprehend what she was feeling right now. The way Brian was looking at her was so intense that even if she covered her face to hide from him, she could not hide herself. just like he said. His mysterious eyes were flashing a warning to her, saying silently, "You are mine." She could feel that. His gaze was drinking every ounce of courage in her and leaving her helpless in front of him. She parted her lips as she felt his palm run over her bare thighs. She let out shaky breaths when he leaned down and nuzzled her neck. She tried to break free with her hands just to touch him, but he did not let her do that. His hand tightened the grip around her wrists. She let out a low moan when his hand, which was on her thigh, moved upward inside her dress. Her eyes widened when it reached the waistband of her panties. "Mate!" She could only call him, as she was stunned by his action. He did not pull down her panties or touch her over them, but only played with the waistband with his long fingers as if he were teasing her. She did not know how this man could make her feel so different. He was playing with her, teasing her while at the same time showing his possessive side to her, demonstrating his possession of her. Her eyes closed as Brian kissed her delicate collarbone. At that time, a ringtone began echoing in the massive office room. Brian stopped, and Sophia opened her eyes abruptly. She recognized that it was her phone that was ringing. She looked at Brian and saw him staring at her. "That's my phone," she mumbled. Brian did not look like he wanted to leave her. She gulped when he released her hands and pulled her to sit up on the desk. She immediately wrapped her hands around his neck to balance herself. She blushed when their faces came closer. Her phone stopped ringing. She almost forgot that someone was calling her on the phone. His hands moved around her waist and drew her closer. Just before she could look into his eyes, her phone began to ring once again. There was a frown formed between Brian's brows as he released her waist and moved back from her. It was really hard for him to control himself when she was this close to him. Her innocent look was the biggest turn-on for him. No matter how much he tried to restrain himself, the desire that built inside him to ruin her grew daily. She turned red when she glanced at him. He was gazing at her. She tried to get down from the desk but became unbalanced. Before she could fall to the floor, a strong arm wrapped around her waist. "Are you okay?" Brian's gentle voice reached her ears. She looked up at him and found him looking at her with a little worry. She smiled at him. He cared for her. She could see that clearly in his eyes. If he was jealous of Bruce because he was with her, it was also a sign of love. She was convinced that he loved her. "I'm okay," she said softly, and she let go of his arms, which she had held a while ago to support herself. She rushed to the couch where her bag was. Though the ringing stopped once again, she pulled out her phone from the bag and looked at the missed calls. She checked the caller's number and found that it was an unknown number. "Mate, let me check who called me," she mumbled to Brian without looking at him, knowing that her voice reached him. Just as she was about to dial the number, that person called her again. She hurriedly received the call. "Hello? Are you Brian's new secretary?" A woman's voice came out of the phone. Sophia found the voice familiar, but she could not recognize it. "Yes, who's speaking?" "I'm his mother. Where is he?" Sophia was stunned. It was Brian's mother, Juliana. She remembered her last encounter with Juliana. She slapped her and scolded her after believing her younger son's lie. "Girl, are you listening?" "Yes." "Hand the phone to him. He is not receiving my calls." Sophia realized that Juliana did not recognize her. She slowly turned around to glance at Brian. He was already sitting in his chair, clutching the coffee mug, which had nearly spilled on the desk when he moved it slightly before pinning her down there. He gazed at her and raised a brow, indicating that he wanted to know who had called. Sophia removed her phone from her ear, placed her hand on the receiver, and walked towards him. "It's your mom." He frowned when he heard that. She gave him her phone, as his mother told her. He glanced at her phone and grabbed it. "Mom." Sophia stared at Brian, trying to understand the conversation between the mother and son. "I'm busy," Brian said, leaning his back against his chair. Sophia felt awkward while standing there. She realized that she should not be eavesdropping on others' conversations. She leaned down to grasp Brian's coffee mug, which he was holding. He did not let it go as he looked at her. "Let me make another cup of coffee." It turned cold. He gave her a nod and let go of the cup for her. After grabbing it, She hurriedly left the cabin. She did not forget to see if her clothes were fixed before leaving the cabin. She did not waste her time and went to make another cup of coffee for Brian. By the time she returned to Brian's cabin, she saw him reading a file. She put the coffee mug in front of him and grabbed her phone, which was lying on the desk, close to him. Just as she stood straight after grasping her phone, Brian spoke up. "You are going to the pack house with me tonight." She was stunned after hearing him. She met his gaze and asked, "Why?" He replied to her calmly, "Mom asked me to attend the family dinner. I want you to accompany me there." Sophia could not help but feel shocked. Did he just say he wanted her to accompany him to his family dinner? It was really a big deal. She knew what a family dinner in the pack house meant. Brian did not live with his family, so every week his father called him for a family dinner. She almost forgot about it, but now she recalls that Bruce once mentioned it to her. He had stated that Brian never missed family dinner because it was the only way for others to meet or talk with him. He was indeed a very busy person. But one thing Bruce clearly defined was that no one from outside the family was invited there. Only the family members and their chosen lovers could attend the dinner. Sophia lowered her head. She started to fiddle with her fingers as she thought, "He wants to take me to the pack house with him. He sure has feelings for me." "Why do you look upset? Do I need to remind you that you have to be with me whenever and whatever I want?" His voice was not cold, and at the same time it was not soft either. It was as if he were alarming her, and she would have to listen to him. She let out a sigh and raised her head to look at her. It seemed that he only knew dominance. He knew only this language to make others do what he wanted. Even if he had not put any pressure on her, she would have been willing to comply with his requests. "I can go anywhere with you, mate." He fixed his gaze on her when he heard her soft voice. She also did not break eye contact. Her smile reached her eyes, showing that she was telling him the truth. They heard a knock on the door. Sophia turned to the door and left the cabin, as she had work to do. The whole day, she set appointments and meetings for Brian. She realized that she would have to work and study in advance for the next 2 days since she would have to go to another pack in a few days. It was already evening. Sophia collected all the files and headed back to Brian's office. She placed the file on his desk securely and looked at him. He was swamped with work. Sophia glanced at the clock and saw that it was already 8 of the clock in the evening. She shook her head and walked to Brian's chair. She held his wrist lightly, which was about to turn the page of the file. Brian glanced at her hand, then lifted her head to look at her. "Mate, don't you want to go to the pack house? You will be late." "That's my house, not my office, where I will be late," he replied to her, but put the file on the desk. She let go of his hand and said, "Family is more important than work. You can't sacrifice your family time for your work." His brows lifted in response. "Oh, really? Does family give you the power that a big business deal can give you?" Sophia was taken aback by his question. She was quiet, as she was speechless. How could he compare his family time with a business deal? She took a few steps back as he rose from his chair, grabbed his suit jacket, and placed it on his wrist. "Let's go." He walked past her and made his way to the door. She stared at his back while trailing behind him. He was a business tycoon for a reason. It looked like he only liked to do business. He portrayed that he had no emotions for his family, but she knew that he cared for his family. He cared for his brother the most. She had seen his dark look when she broke the photo frame in his bedroom. There was no other photo in his room, but only him with his younger brother. It showed that he loved him the most. Sophia had a wish to make him understand that he loved his people. Why did he never confess it to them? They walked out of the company. Brian's driver was waiting outside for him with his car. They got in the car and headed in the direction of the pack house. Sophia began to feel nervous the moment the car started to move. Since the day she spoke with Brian there on behalf of her brother, she has not gone to the pack house again. She could recall how displeased everyone was when they learned that she was Brian's mate. His mother's slap still made her feel pain in her heart. They were very rude to her. Suddenly, she did not want to go to the pack house. She turned her head toward Brian, whose eyes were outside the window. I don't want to go there. Hearing her, he moved his head toward her. What? Mate, I don't want to go there. Can you please go there without me? She asked politely, but her tone was convincing. She did not have to care for the driver since he had already known that she was Brian's mate. He had heard her a few times addressing Brian as her mate, so there was nothing to worry about. Brian returned his gaze back to the window after saying, I will be there with you. You don't need to think about anything else. She lowered her head. She knew that once he said something, he would do that. If he wanted her to accompany him, then she would have to go there. She kept quiet and waited for the car to reach the pack house. After a while, the car stopped in front of the packing house. Sophia got out of the car and looked ahead at the pack house. She felt that she had bad memories of this house. Brian walked ahead, but when he did not find her beside him, he turned around to look at her. She inhaled deeply before approaching him. They entered the pack house together. In the living room, Brian's parents were seated on the couch, so when they noticed her with Brian, they seemed shocked. Juliana got to her feet and pointed her finger at her. Why are you here? Juliana's eyes shifted toward Brian, and she frowned at him. Brian, what is she doing here? Sophia was shocked by Juliana's reaction. Juliana was acting like she was a criminal and just came to the pack house after escaping from prison. She did not know why she hated her so much. She could understand that what Bruce said to them could really hurt them, but still, they could have at least found out the truth first before behaving rudely with someone. She is with me, Brian said as he started to walk toward the couches. Sophia remained motionless at her place, where she was standing at the time. She did not know if she should go behind him or not. What do you mean, Brian? Harry, Brian's father, asked him. Brian turned his head to look at Sophia and motioned with his head for her to come over there. She averted her gaze from him and slowly made her way toward him. As she stood next to him, he said, She is my personal secretary. Personal secretary, she repeated his words in her mind. Was this the only name he could use to call her? What rubbish! Julian's angry tone resounded in the living hall. She looked very angry. Sophia had an impression in the past that Juliana was a soft woman, but after seeing how she was treating her, she believed she was a cold woman who only loved her sons and did not care about others' children. This girl is a scam. You know she is your mate. Then how can you make her your secretary? Did you think about your brother once before giving her a job in your company? Juliana was disappointed in her elder son. She could not believe that Brian could let Sophia stay next to him. How could he do that after what the girl had done to Bruce? Sophia tightened her fists while her gaze was fixed on the floor. She had no intention of getting humiliated. Why did she even come here in the first place? She should have persuaded Brian not to take her here. Brian, Bruce is not here. It's better if you send this girl out before he returns, Harry told Brian. Though Sophia's head was down, she could feel Brian's parents' gazes on her. She knew they were glaring at her. Mom, calm down. No. Juliana interrupted Brian and abruptly moved in Sophia's direction. Sophia was caught off guard when Juliana grabbed her arm. She looked at Juliana and saw hatred shown inside her eyes for her. You cheated on my younger son and now set your evil eyes on my elder son. How dare you? Get out! Get out of my house right now. As soon as she finished her sentence, Juliana began to pull Sophia in the direction of the door. Sophia was too shocked to say anything. At that moment, Juliana was halted by a growl. The growl had shaken Sophia. She did not know if she was the only one who reacted like that. But then, she came to the realization that Juliana's hand was trembling around her wrist. Everyone turned to the person who had just growled. It was Brian. He was giving his mother a stern look. Juliana let out a gasp when Brian's eyes turned red. Brian took a deep breath as if he were trying to keep his anger under control, but it was clearly visible that he was furious at his mother. Brian, why are you scaring your mom? Harry asked, looking a little nervous around his son after the growl. Brian did not reply to him, nor did he look at him. His eyes were fixed on his mother. Brian, my so. How dare you touch her without my permission? Brian asked her while muttering his teeth. Juliana's eyes widened as she immediately let go of Sophia's hand. When I said she was with me, you should have controlled your behavior. Brian, why are you taking her side? Juliana asked Brian. She then turned to Sophia and asked, what did you do to my son? Why is he speaking for you? Sophia had no answer. She did not know if she should feel upset for herself or for this woman. The way Brian was dominating his parents was something that surprised her. She had seen a glimpse of his dominance over his parents the day she found him as her mate. But today she could see that Alpha Brian again, who was not talking as their son but as their head alpha. He was not afraid of anyone, not even his parents. Brian walked to Sophia and held her hand to pull her beside him. Juliana and Harry both looked shocked. That day, you slapped her, which is something that you should not have done, but now you have again started to behave rudely with her. Juliana parted her lips in shock. But she cheated on Brew. No, she didn't. It was your son who cheated on her. Now I don't want to hear anything about it again. If you can't let me control myself, I don't want to dine with you both anymore. Brian turned around, along with Sophia. Sophia was staring at him the whole time he was talking with his parents. She was amazed by how he took a stand for her. The younger brother, who used to be her boyfriend, let her take the slap from his mother and had not told them the truth up until now. But on the other hand, the big brother, who did not even think about his parents, stood beside her. Fate did not choose a wrong mate for her. Her eyes began to well up with tears as she kept staring at her powerful mate. He was holding her hand tightly in a protective way. The atmosphere was cold in the living room. Brian looked fiercer. His parents were frightened that he would lose control. Brian, Juliana called him in an upset tone. Sophia turned around, which made Brian turn to his parents. Don't leave. You know your mom is sick. She wants to have dinner with you, Harry said with a calm tone. Sophia patted Brian's hand. You can stay with them. I should leave now. She did not want to ruin the family dinner. However, Brian gave her a glare to shut her mouth. At that time, a voice came to their ears from behind. What's going on here? Everyone turned around and looked in the direction of the door. Bruce had just returned to the pack house. It appeared as though he was perplexed, but when his gaze landed on Sophia, his expression changed. Sophia? Juliana and Harry glanced at each other. They were under the impression that Bruce was innocent and would feel hurt seeing Sophia. Sophia stared at Bruce. She found it difficult to accept that he had not only not yet told his parents the truth, but had also repeatedly begged her forgiveness. She looked away from Bruce, but then her eyes fell on Brian, who was staring at her. His eyes were predatory, as if observing her. As soon as she recalled what Brian had done to her when he found out about her meeting with Bruce, she immediately averted her gaze from Brian. It was evidently clear that he did not like it. Bruce, you are back, Juliana said, walking to him. Bruce moved his eyes from Sophia and turned his attention to his mother. Juliana reached out and grabbed his hand before making her way toward the other people. Your brother has come to attend the family dinner. Let's have dinner together. Bruce came to a stop beside Sophia and turned his head toward her. Sophia, what are you doing here? He had a voice that was too soft while talking to her, which was not something that his parents liked. They appeared to be taken aback by the gentle manner in which he addressed Sophia. It was their expectation that he would become enraged with her. Sophia lowered her head and made an effort to avoid making eye contact with anyone who was present in the living hall. I came here with Alpha, she replied. Bruce glanced at Brian and kept his eyes on him for a while. Bruce cleared his throat and spoke out politely. Brother, long time. However, Brian did not respond to him. Bruce observed that his big brother's eyes were still on his ex-girlfriend. In response to Brian's gaze on Sophia, he clenched his fists and tightened his grip on them. You stop coming to the pack house. This house seems to welcome you as a guest. Brian's eyes moved from Sophia and turned beside her. He looked directly into Bruce's eyes. Bruce could see that his brother was angry for some reason. He did not know why Brian brought Sophia with him to a family dinner. Perhaps. His head shook, and he took a breath that was shaky. Nevertheless, when Brian spoke to him, he came dangerously close to losing his breath. When you become a guest in this pack, I will say the same thing to you at that time." As he took in the meaning of what Brian had said, Bruce's eyes widened in surprise. "Brian!" Harry yelled at Brian. Astonishment engulfed Juliana. She could not believe that her elder son could talk about banishing his own brother from the pack. On the other hand, Sophia could not be more nervous. She was also stunned by Brian's remark. "Brother, did I do something to offend you?" Bruce asked. His voice or tone no longer felt like taunts or mockery. Sophie was able to pick up on the fear in his voice. However, she was only thinking about how she would escape from this situation right now. Brian did not reply to Bruce. Instead, he turned his gaze to his father and said, "Don't yell at me again. The first thing you should do is question your younger son about his wrongdoings." Harry looked at Bruce with a frown and asked, "What is Brian talking about? What did you do?" Sophia slowly turned her head toward Bruce to look at him. Bruce could not look into her eyes and lowered his head as if he realized what his brother was talking about. After that, he muttered in a low tone, "I cheated on Sophia. I lied to you all that day." Both Harry and Juliana's eyes widened. Shock was clearly visible in their eyes. "No, this is not possible. Are you saying this to keep her from feeling ashamed? Don't lie to us. I know my son can't do such things. You mentioned how much you had loved her in the past. How can you do that?" Sophia glanced at Juliana and Harry. It was difficult for them to believe it. She could feel that they had a soft spot in their hearts for their younger son. This son was close to them, unlike their elder son, who was always busy with his work. Sophia took a deep breath and felt that it was time to let go of the past. Since she was with Brian now, there was no need to recall the past again and again. "I'm telling the truth, Mom. She was innocent. I cheated on her with her best friend. I can't explain why I did it, but I did. It was a mistake that I will regret for my whole life." Hearing Bruce, his parents were unable to respond in any way. Juliana glanced at Sophia. As if she did not want to apologize to her for what she had done to her, she clenched her fists and made a tight fist. The arrogance that she possessed prevented her from apologizing to Sophia. "I still can't believe—" "Enough of this drama. I don't have time for all your nonsense," Brian said, turning around. He glanced at Sophia and raised a brow. "What? Do you want to stay here and keep watching their drama?" Sophia was shocked by his words. He did not just care about anything. "Brian, when did you start acting in such an impolite manner? You can't talk to your family like that in front of an outsider," Harry said with anger. "He is not an outsider for me." Saying that, Brian grabbed Sophia's hand and dragged her along with him as he left the pack house, leaving his family behind in shock. Sophia stared at Brian until he took her out of the pack house and reached his car. The driver opened the back door immediately for him. Brian abruptly shut the back door, which caused the driver to become startled. "I'll drive." Almost instantly, the driver took a few steps back and bowed his head to him. Brian opened the passenger door and pushed Sophia inside, then climbed into the driver's seat. Sophia was in a daze. Everything was happening so fast that she did not have time to comprehend anything. As soon as Brian started the car, she turned her head in his direction. She concentrated her attention on him. He looked angry, very angry. His furious eyes were fixed on the road as he drove. He had his fingers firmly gripping the steering wheel. Because of the gloom that was in his eyes and the fierceness that was on his face, anyone would feel terrified. But Sophia could not just tear her eyes off of him. "She is not an outsider to me." His statement kept replaying in her mind again and again. Rather than caring about his family, this man was only concerned about her. Because of her, he could even argue with his father. He said she was not an outsider for him. What exactly did he mean when he said that? She did not need any more proof to believe that he had feelings for her and that he was the best man for her. "My man really cares for me," she thought while looking at him with a smile. "What's so funny?" Her body jerked in response to his voice, and she immediately turned her gaze away from him. "What? Why are you smiling? Is there something funny happening here?" he asked, turning his head to glance at her. She gulped and blinked her eyes a few times. He was looking at the road. Then how did he see me smiling? She thought. "Alpha, you shouldn't have left your house." "Pack house," he muttered. reminding her that it was not his home. Sophia let out a sigh and turned her head toward the window. "You didn't even have dinner. You must be hungry." As soon as she finished saying that, the car came to a stop in a corner of the road just moments later. Sophia felt confused as to why he stopped the car, but when she turned to face her, she came dangerously close to retreating. Brian leaned toward her and said, "You are right. I am feeling hungry right now." She gulped as she looked into his dark eyes. They were cruising over her face, taking in every detail. All the things he did for her tonight were reflected in her mind. It made her muster up her courage. Reaching up, she put her hand on his cheek. He looked down at her hand, his brows furrowed. "Don't get mad at them, mate. They are your parents." Brian fixed his eyes on her when she continued to talk. "I am grateful that you stood by me today. No one had ever done that for me except my brother." "So I remind you of your brother?" he asked with a deep, growling tone. Her eyes widened and she shook her head. No, I didn't mean that. It's just..." She put her hand away from his cheek, lowered her head, and mumbled, "It's just that you told your family that I am not an outsider. I also want to tell you that you are not an outsider to me either. I have the same feelings as well." A few minutes passed, but Brian did not let out a word. She lifted her head to glance at him, only to find him staring at her. His gaze made her feel shy. It reminded her of what he did to her in his office room today. The intense gaze of the man, combined with the silence of the car on the dark and silent road, caused her heartbeat to run fast. The lamplight on the road, which was a little further away, was the only way she could see his face. The yellow light cast a light shade over his handsome face, highlighting the beauty of his eyes for her. "Matt!" All of a sudden, he moved closer to her and pressed his lips against her. She was completely taken aback. Every time, he surprised her with an unexpected kiss. She immediately closed her eyes, wrapped her hands around his neck, and kissed him back. She wanted to show him that she also wanted him the same way he did. Along with tilting his head, he leaned his body toward her. Her eyes opened when she heard a click sound. She gasped when Brian unfastened her seatbelt. She had no idea why he did that, but then he grasped her waist and pulled her to make her sit on his lap. After breaking the kiss, she looked at him with a pair of eyes that were filled with shock. Brian leaned back against his seat and looked at her. With a slow motion, he ran his thumb over her lips and spoke in a raspy voice. "Don't give me this innocent look, because I don't even know myself when I'll ruin you." Sophia blushed and averted her gaze from him. She covered her face with her hands to hide herself from him, almost forgetting that she was sitting on her lap in a straddling position. "Look at me." She moved her fingers away from her eyes to look at him, but she did not take her hands off her face. He sighed and reached for her hands. He removed them from her face and lightly grabbed the back of her head before pulling her face closer to his. She looked at him with her eyes widening. When he was about to speak to her, his eyes wandered to the dress that she was wearing. It loosened on her neck and moved down, exposing her delicate collarbone. "Damn! I can't even talk right now." He scolded himself, and without any warning, he kissed her once again. He kissed her hungrily, as if he were starving to kiss her. She felt goosebumps at the sensation of his hands moving around her body. Brian broke the kiss and moved to her neck, where he then began to kiss her tender spot. The silent car was no longer silent when she moaned. She tried to move when she felt him suck on her neck, but his tight grip around her waist stopped her. As he moved closer to her ear, he bit her earlobe, which caused her to let out a gasp. She instantly fisted his shirt upon hearing his deep voice. "Don't move to make me hard, baby girl. Otherwise, I will have to take you right here, right now." Sophia was taken aback. Her cheeks heated up as she realized what he was saying. She bit her bottom lip as an unfamiliar sensation rose in her core. With a careful move, she slowly hugged his neck. Brian appeared to be stunned by her action. It was clear that she did not want that right now. He sighed, realizing he was straining too hard to hold himself together. He closed his eyes and let out a long, slow breath when she laid her head on his shoulder. Without a word, he wrapped his hand around her back. His gaze was on the road, but the yellow light was preventing him from keeping his eyes fixed on the road. However, the girl in his arms made him feel at ease. Her soothing heartbeat was something that reduced his anger. After staying like that for a while, Sophia moved her head back from his neck and looked at his face. She met his dark gaze. She looked into them. The closeness gave her the confidence to move her hands and cup his cheeks. "Mate, don't look mad. I am afraid of you when you are mad. Your eyes." She moved her gaze to his whole face, then back to his eyes. "Whenever you get angry, your eyes turn dark. I don't like it. I feel like you are two different people." His brow furrowed upon hearing her words. She brushed her thumbs across his brow. It caused him to relax his frown. He stared at her and found her cute. She was talking very sweetly, as though she were coercing him not to get angry ever again. Brian realized that he had never thought she would ever behave like that when he first met her. Every encounter with her used to give him the impression that she wanted to seduce him. But now, she always managed to stop him when he tried to push himself too far. Her closeness and the way she behaved were killing him inside and making him feel like banging her the whole night. He pulled her head and pressed it against his chest, then started the car. Sophia was shocked. Is he thinking about driving the car like this? She thought. She tilted her head slightly to look at his face. Will you drive like this? No. I'm moving back to my seat. She sat up to move, but he pressed her onto his lap once again. Didn't I tell you not to move? He asked. She pouted and returned to his chest abruptly. Okay. She smiled and hugged him tightly. She was over the moon. He was unwilling to let her go of his arms. Brian placed one hand on her back to keep her secure in his arm and the other on the steering wheel. Are we heading to my house? She asked while fiddling with her fingers on his shirt button. No. Then, don't you want to have dinner? Sophia's face lightened up. Dinner? Are we going somewhere for dinner? Brian took a look at her and noticed her excitement. Yeah. Mate, can we go to a place I know? His eyes moved on the road while driving past the cars. What place? There is a restaurant a little distance from my university. Can we go there? He could not deny her and drove in the direction of the restaurant. His brows knitted as he pulled the car up beside a tiny eatery. Are you sure this is the place you were talking about? He asked her. She sat up straight and gave her a cheery nod. Yes. She slowly moved back to her seat and fixed her clothes. She combed her hair with her finger, thinking that it had messed up while they were making out. She blushed while thinking about it, totally oblivious that Brian's eyes were on her every action and reaction. Let's go, mate. She got out of the car and went to the window beside him. She opened the door for him and said, I'm excited. He had no idea why she was so excited about it, because all he could see was that it was not even an average restaurant. She locked her arm with his and walked inside the restaurant. Brian glanced at her hand that she wrapped around his arm. He averted his gaze away from her and looked inside the small restaurant. He noticed a couple of tables set up there. The entire restaurant was filled with flowering plants. People who could not afford to eat at expensive restaurants came here to enjoy the lively atmosphere. Sophia walked to a table next to the window and pulled a chair for him. Please, sit, mate. I am giving you a treat today. His brows lifted in surprise, but he did not say no to her to break her mood. With a giggle, she sat on the chair across from him. Brian stared at her. He had been observing her for a long time and found that she was different from others. He gave her enough salary to pay the bill at an expensive restaurant, but she brought him to a low-key restaurant where there were only ordinary people. I know you don't have a habit of coming to these types of places. However, I often come here. The food here is delicious. I hope you will like it. Sophia handed him the menu and waited for him to choose something. Brian moved it back in her direction and said, Order something you like. She looked stunned, but then nodded her head with a pleased smile. She raised her hand to call a waitress to order the best dishes from the restaurant. The waitress was pretty young. She kept glancing at Brian when Sophia was ordering food. When Sophia finished ordering, she noticed the woman was not listening to her, instead staring at Brian. She glared at the girl. Excuse me, why are you staring at him? The waitress chuckled nervously. She was not expecting to be caught. She pushed her hair behind her ear and blushed when Brian turned his head toward her. Sophia scoffed at the girl's flushed face and said, "I know my man is handsome, but focus on your work. You don't need to stare at him all day." Days passed quickly, and the day had come for Sophia to go to another pack to attend a pack meeting with Brian. In the last few days, Brian did not get angry with her for anything. Just like she requested, he talked to her softly. She was delighted that he had changed himself for her, but only she could see that change. To others, he remained the same Brian Morrison, the man everyone feared. "Sophia, what are your plans for tomorrow? It's the weekend." Sophia turned her head and looked at Sarah. They were sitting in the cafeteria after finishing their classes. "I am going to another pack with Alpha." Sarah's eyes widened in shock. "Are you serious?" Sophia had not told her about it because she was unsure whether her mother would agree to let her go to another pack. But last night, Beta Robert called her mother and told her that Sophia had to go out of the pack for business purposes. Her mother was startled at first, but when she learned that the head Alpha would be with her daughter and would take care of her safety, she agreed. Sophia wanted to tell her that she would not have to worry much because she was going with her mate. However, she remembered Brian's warning not to tell anyone about it, so she forbade herself from revealing it to her mother. "What?" Sarah could not stop herself from screaming in shock. Then her shocked expression lightened as she smirked at Sophia. "Wow, babe." Because Sarah screamed, other people stared at her and gave her looks. Sarah returned their looks and asked, "What? Can't I be happy now?" They returned to what they were doing, and Sarah turned her attention back to Sophia. "So, when did you come up with this plan? You didn't tell me about it before. I am angry with you, huh?" Sophia would not have to go to the company today since Brian had given her a day off, so she could relax and spend her time with her friends. She held Sarah's hand and said, "I was not sure about it. Last night, Beta Robert called Mom and asked for his permission. Alpha is so caring. I can't imagine your romantic date there," Sarah said, resting her chin on her palm. "We are just going to attend a meeting." Sarah sneered at Sophia. "Come on, you are going to visit a pack together. It's impossible that nothing will happen there." Sophia blushed upon hearing Sarah's words. She did not think so. Every time Brian got close to her, she always hugged him to stop him from going deeper. It was because she was afraid that if she gave in, he would change back to his old self. The attraction he felt for her would not be the same after getting her fully. "Don't be afraid of anything. He is your mate. You can trust him." Sarah patted her hand to assure her. "You are right. By the way, be careful when you talk to the other alphas there," Sarah warned her. Sophia was confused as to why she said that. Sarah chuckled as she thought about something and reminded her, "Have you forgotten how he talked to the professor about breaking up your study group?" Sophia inhaled, recalling the night she went to dinner with Brian at her favorite restaurant. That night, when he dropped her home after dinner, he told her she did not have to do anything with Bruce. She assumed he would speak with Bruce about it. But instead of speaking with Bruce, he spoke directly to the professor. He told her to break the group. When the professor asked how he would divide the marks because it was in the middle of submission, Brian ordered him to tell the 4 students to submit whatever they had worked on up to this point, and then give the group full marks. The professor could not deny it, because it was an order from the head alpha. In fact, he felt lucky that Brian himself called him. He believed that Brian did that because of Bruce. However, he was unaware of the truth. One brother set him up to form the group, while another brother forced him to break it. They had just one girl in mind, and that was Sophia. "It's just that Bruce is my ex-boyfriend, so don't make excuses. I have seen him get jealous a few times." Sophia chuckled as she admitted that. "Where is Nolan?" "He is with his dad. He said he had something to do, so he did not come today." "I see. When are you leaving?" "Tonight." After talking with Sarah for a long time, Sophia left the university to go to her house. When she got home, she found her mother preparing food for her. She spent the whole day with her mother. In the evening, Sophia packed her luggage. After having dinner with her, she got ready to leave. "Take care of yourself, okay? Don't go anywhere and stay close to Alpha. It will keep people away from you when he is around." Sophia hugged her mother and comforted her. Mom, I will stay safe. Don't worry about me. I promise I will take care of you, but promise me you will take your medicine on time. I promise, her mother replied with a smile. Sophia got a call from Brian and received it. Ma? She paused when she realized she had nearly called him mate in front of her mother. She glanced at her mother. She cleared her throat and said, Alpha, I am leaving my house to head to the airpo. What's the time? Brian's deep voice reached her ear. She checked the time on her watch and saw that it was late at night. However, she still has time for the flight. She could easily get to the airport. Alpha, it will take me an hour to get to the airport. I will be there on time, she said, assuring him that she would not miss the flight. Brian remained quiet for a few seconds after hearing her. Then, after a while, Sophia heard him again. I'm outside your house.